Hey, Ed Marx, CEO, Marx Advisory.
Welcome to Talking Health Tech. It's nice to have you on the show.
Man, I feel like I finally made it. You know, I've been coming to this show as my second year, and I saw everyone the first year that I was here, and I was so jealous. And I saw that magic bus behind me, and I was like, please have me on the show, so thank you.
Oh, it's so nice to have you on here finally.
I know. I'm so ecstatic.
Yeah, amazing. So tell me, what have you been talking about today at Australian Healthcare Week?
So I got to talk about my favorite topic, so I'm doing two, and I already spoke at my keynote on patient experience. And then I'm going to do a master class really on how to engage the workforce in digital transformation. But the keynote was really about patient experience and, 5 things any leader can do in their organization to improve patient experience.
And I love, you mentioned before we hit record that 4 of those actually don't require any money. And I guess that's the biggest thing is when we look at patient experience, a lot of it is a nice to have and it feels a bit soft.
Yeah.
But tell me more about what we can do without having to have a budget line.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the biggest defense, and I get it completely, is I don't have any money. We don't need money. We don't spend any money on it. So I always say, okay, do this first 4 things and the money will happen. And I can give many examples of how that is. But, one of the things is to create a culture of empathy. So all the things that I talk about seem really simple, like, oh, we do that already. But then when I really go little level deeper with people, we really aren't doing it for the most part. So creating a culture of empathy. So I just give like 3 or 4 ideas, and there's many more in the book. 3 or 4 ideas anyone can do to create such a culture. So you probably want to know, what's one example? One example is instead of you speaking, like if you're the leader, instead of you speaking at all of your town hall meetings or whatever, you bring your teams together, always have a patient as a speaker. Because it's one thing for you as a leader, they sort of expect it, that you're going to say something positive like rah, rah, and what's our why. And that is important of a leader to do. But it's even more powerful when it comes from a patient. So at every meeting, we have a patient that starts off the meeting and they talk about how technology helps save their life or improve their experience. I mean, I can tell you so many stories. They're mostly tearjerkers, and it really touches people's hearts, and they get it. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I serve here. I get why we do it. Oh, I'm ready to go and do more.
All right.
Yeah.
So a culture of empathy. What else have we got?
So another one is to run IT as a service, not a process. So that's antithetical to what we're being taught today with Lean Sigma, Six Sigma, process improvement, Gemba walks. All those are great. So I'm not discounting those at all. But I think we went overboard to the point that we've basically taken everything that we do and stratified it into, okay, we do radiology, we do lab, we do nursing. And so we get really good at radiology, and we got all this perfection in terms of the process of radiology, but we don't keep the bigger picture in mind with the patient. So the patient, they're going from radiology to lab to see their neurosurgeon. So you may be perfect in radiology, and so I can give you so many examples, but the patient goes, they have to be transported to an appointment, takes a couple hours, costs money, and they go there, have a good experience. Then they go back. The next day, they got their lab appointment, and it's the same thing. And the next day, the third day, they go to see their neurosurgeon. Well, think about that from a patient perspective. Oh, it's horrible. They had to make 3 different trips, 3 different specialties, when it could have been 1 trip. So if we stop looking at things like as individual processes, but services across the continuum, it makes a huge difference. And it's not that hard to do. So one of our differentiators, and one way that an organization can actually improve their revenues by offering that as a service and say, hey, we're one-stop shop. You come in and in one day, you'll have seen all the different specialties, and you'll have your final, meeting with the clinicians to review all the results same day. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, amazing. Just totally change that up. So I want to dive then into your keynote, which is all about digital enablement. And I suspect that those two link a little bit together. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you'll be talking about in that session?
Yeah, so we'll be focusing mostly on the workforce aspect. So how do you get the workforce really engaged to have digital transformation? Because here's what I believe, that you cannot have digital transformation without personal transformation. So it's kind of funny. You have all these leaders talking digital transformation. We're going to change things. And you look at them, and it's not a judgment, but you have to do the reality check. You look at their lifestyle, and you look at maybe their work style, and there's no transformation. So how do you expect? So a really simple example from many years ago, you'll see this is a dated example, but it's a very clear one, where I was driving digital transformation for our organization. And my naysayers, my fellow individuals on the C-suite that were putting the brakes on all these different like cool things we were trying to do, were the same ones when I travel. I'd see them and they would use paper tickets, right, to get on the airplane. They would print out their baggage claim tickets. Everything about them would exude old school. But yet they were trying to tell me and tell my team how to do digital transformation, how to do next generation of apps, as an example. But they themselves did not do apps. Or so I'd be like, a more contemporary example would be, all right, so a lot of things are apps and a lot of our engagement. So I'd say, okay, can I find you on TikTok? And they'd be like, what, TikTok? Okay, what's your Instagram handle? Instagram? How about X? How about, maybe they had LinkedIn. But these are the same individuals that are telling you, oh, don't do this or do that with the latest app, but they don't know. So again, not a judgment, but an opportunity, therefore, to adopt these things. I'm the same way. I don't, what kind of time do I want to spend on TikTok and Instagram? But thankfully, I have kids of that age, and they're all younger adults now, and they help train me, and I adopt it, and they sort of force me. And that's why I'm able to lead and have led digital transformation, because I've transformed myself.
Sure, that's a very key takeaway there. I know for me, when I was sort of transitioning from the clinical space into digital health, I had to really work out how to leverage LinkedIn and what that actually meant, because as a clinician on the floor, it's not something that we use. But certainly digital enablement and transformation, it needs to be at all levels.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I encourage people, and everyone could do that. They don't have to have a clinical background. It's great when you do. I always hired my teams that at least 25% had a clinical background, such as yourself. What about the rest of the individuals? So I tried to expose them as much as possible to the 25% on the team that were clinicians, but I also had them think about, I would never force any of this on them, but think about, because I did them myself, so I led by example, volunteer every week. So volunteer and be in a patient care setting, so you see patients and you see clinicians. I would do these programs that they did have to comply with, which were shadowing programs. So if you were a director above, every month you did rounds, clinical rounds. If you were just a non-director, everyone else, you had to shadow a clinician one full shift per year. And it was a great program. They could switch up where they went, which hospital, which service. Maybe they wanted to spend time in the OR, maybe shadow a nurse. And they had to do that and report back. And you do that year over year over year, encourage volunteerism, have the patients as presenters, have clinicians as presenters, shadow, do all these different things. It transforms people. And that's when you get transformation.
Amazing. Well, some very rich insights there, Ed, for our listeners and also for those at Australian Healthcare Week. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Now can we ride the bus?
Absolutely. I'll take a photo.